Hello and welcome to the Outlaw Astrology Podcast with your intrepid star guide and cosmic detective APM. And the previous episode we talked about the houses in archetypal astrology, and today's focus are the four angles as primary archetypal pathways and gateways. And so housekeeping, follow us on Instagram, Pinterest and YouTube. Those links will be in the show notes. And please subscribe to our newsletter, The Daily Stargazer, for exclusive content. Link also in the show notes. And if you like our Astroflow, and share the podcast. In addition, please review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube to help others find us. And now onward. So, the angles as archetypal thresholds. So the angles are basically the skeleton of a chart, is the primary structure and also the primal structure. And angles connect personal experience to collective patterns. So there are four angles as four primary modes of engaging with reality. And so angles are also the most sensitive points for transits and progressions. Now, you'll note that I don't tell you what the archetype should be called. I've decided that I wish to leave it up to you, the listener, to determine what you want to call the first house yourself. So, because everybody's going to have in their first house their ascendant in different signs, 12 different signs with different aspects going on. And so that's many, many, many different configurations, which is why you haven't heard me say that. One, I don't want to tell you what to think, what to feel, any of that. I'm merely a guide, and I encourage you to take the information and use what works and resonates, and to then leave the rest and put your own spin on it with your own style, using your own experiences. So, if you see the first house in Taurus as the steward, the earth steward, that is perfectly valid. Whereas someone else might see it as more of more of the Earth Mother type vibe. Neither are incorrect. Both are accurate to whoever has that particular chart aspect. So I encourage you, when you're world building or writing stories or whatever way you wish to create and anchor this information, to see your own experiences and your own interpretations as valid, and that my interpretations are merely meant to spur insight and also to provoke thought and inspire you to come up with your own that most resonate with you. Okay, so having said that, angles are the most sensitive points, usually for transits and progressions. So that means that when you've got a transiting moon touching on the ascendant or the descendant or the medium quelli or the imum quelli, that's really a big deal. And if it's an outer planet, it's an even bigger deal. So we're going to start with the ascendant and descendant axis. This is the self and the other axis, okay? And I say axis, I mean not access, but axis, A-X-I-S. And so the ascendant as a warrior archetype, for example, and that is how we meet the world. But here's the thing, that's only if Aries is on the cusp of the ascendant. As I've said, if it were Taurus, more of an earth steward, earth mother, maybe those are possible vibes, and that's how we meet the world. Maybe it is Libran, the diplomat, or the lover. That's how we meet the world. So, but I see I would say the ascendant as a warrior archetype, I would see it more as a pioneering archetype, a trailblazing archetype. So it's basically how we meet the world, our view of ourself, and how we meet the world as that self. Whereas the ascendant is the other, it's a lover archetype, and is how we collaborate, how we connect, how we form partnerships and relationships and connections with the other. The ascendant is us, but the seventh house and the descendant is not us. It's the other in our lives, and how we might perceive them or how we might interact with them, for example. So that's how we meet others, or how others also we might perceive others as well. And so the polarity of self and other fundamental human tensions. So that is what we mean by axis. It is us versus others. It is how we meet the world, whether we choose to or not, and how others meet us and how we meet them, whether we choose to or not, for good or for ill. So practical examples of this, how this actually functions in relationships. Let's go into that right now. I would also add to the warrior archetype, I would also add the journeyman. I would add the quester. You could see it also as the seeker. That's another way of seeing that ascendant archetype, because sometimes people see the warrior and they think war. I mean, that's literally when you see a warrior. So you may also add journeyman, which is what I would prefer, how we meet the world. The lover archetype, yes, how we meet others. And so we're going to look at a practical, let's see an example of those. I recall, let's see, we had Moon and Mars. Moon in the first house, not the most comfortable position, particularly for the Moon. And Mars is not the most comfortable position, and it was located in the 7th house. So Mars in the 7th, not always a comfortable position, but the two of these, Moon and Mars, that is in archetypal energy. That is how we go about safety. And our identity, how we see us, and how we see others, it's in opposition here. They were close enough, 17 degrees each, for this to be a strong tension, a push and a pull. And so a person with this archetypal energy in their chart, also an archetype for the self, is someone who's going to have that push and pull, that motivation. And let's say we're going to put it in Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus on the cusp of the 1st, Scorpio on the cusp of the 7th. And the Moon in Taurus is exalted. It likes comfort. It likes safety. It's willing to take its time. It wants to suck the marrow out of life. It wants to enjoy everything. It doesn't want to be hurried. It doesn't like being fast, moving fast. Isn't often restless. It is like a stone that has moss on the underside. It has rolled to its current point, and it's relaxed and enjoying itself. So it's a chance to be comfortable in our own skin. And Mars in Scorpio, also a strong position. Traditionally, Mars ruled the night sign Scorpio because it's a night planet. Scorpio is a night sign. So this could be seen as auspicious. Now, I use Pluto as the shot caller, the guide for Scorpio, the sign of Scorpio. But in this case, we've got Mars and Scorpio, not a terrible place to be. It's peregrine, but I would see it as potentially a blessing. However, it is in opposition to the Moon. And so the Moon wants comfort and safety and wants to take its time. And Mars in Scorpio is this other thing entirely. It wants safety too, but it wants depth. It wants to ask the question why. Yeah, but why? Why is it like this? It's looking for psychoanalysis, self-analysis on a very deep level. It's not about superficiality. It's not about comfort per se. And so there's that energy, that Moon that wants comfort. Mars is willing to overcome comfort in order to better understand itself, to better overcome obstacles. And Scorpio energy can be very passionate, very intense, and sometimes enigmatic. And so there'll be times when we're looking at how we meet others. That meeting of others might come off as enigmatic, passionate, intense, a little bit guarded. And so where we might see ourselves and say, Taurus and the Moon, we identify very strongly with being a Taurus because the Moon is in the 1st house. And so we see ourselves as the Earth Mother or Earth Father, the Earth Steward. We see ourselves, that type of energy. and we're comfortable in our skin, and we like to take our time, and we want to luxuriate. The sensualist is another archetype for Taurus. And we want to luxuriate in our senses, and we want to follow what gives us pleasure and what feels right to us. And we see ourselves as this. And so when other people might say, hey, you're a little passionate, you're a little intense, you're a little gaudy, you're like, we might be going to ourselves, what the hell are you talking about? I am this type of person. I don't know what you mean when you say that. Well, here's the thing. It's an opposition. And oppositions are Saturnine energy. They have an affinity to the planet Saturn. And Saturn is about boundaries. It's about edges. It's about the limit. So this is what we knew of the cosmos when Saturn was the last planet. And that defines the boundary between the inner solar system and the outer solar system. That which we can see with the naked eye and that which we cannot. That which appears to be archetypally more personal to us and that which is not as personal. And therefore we might make the mistake of assuming that it does not touch us at all. So when we're looking at the 7th house, Mars is in Scorpio, but it's Pluto aligned. So I would take the next step and look at that evolutionary energy of Pluto by house first to see what connections it might be making. Also, is it making an aspect? Is it a square aspect? Let's say, for example, for the sake of this, that it is 2 houses. No, let's make it a square aspect. And we've got Mars, so, in Aquarius, on the cusp of the 10th house, and Pluto's in the 10th. So the energy is, the evolution is going to happen out there, which we're going to get to in a second, for the sake of this example. So, as you can see, there's a push and a pull between the moon. They're in opposition. They're in opposite signs. Taurus and Scorpio are an axis. They're in opposite signs, and there is a push and a pull. That's a tension. It sometimes can feel internal, but also can feel as if other people are pushing us from outside. So we might also perceive these other people as being passionate, intense, closed-off types, and see ourselves as more open, more Taurian in our nature, more sensuous, more, take my time, savor life, slow down kind of energy. And these other people we're encountering, all of them are very passionate, obsessive, intense types, and we're trying to figure out how the bloody hell these people have turned up in our lives. And that Mars energy of wanting to go deep with others and have them do the same with us might be confounding until we understand ourselves better, which is the point of archetypal astrology and astrology in general as a spiritual path, but more importantly, a magical path, because it's going to illuminate the darkest areas in ourselves so we can comprehend ourselves better. I say comprehend rather than understand. Understand is cognitive. Comprehension comes from a word that means to grasp, and to grasp is to know it on a deeper level. That means that emotion and feeling is involved with this understanding. And we've also lived the experience, so it's from experience and from our hearts and souls that we understand this information, hence to comprehend. And so that would be a great example, Moon and Mars in the 1st house, 7th house in Taurus, Scorpio. So next, let's look at the midheaven and IC axis. Now, you're going to hear midheaven, another name for it is medium quelli. And the IC stands for Imum Quelli. I've also heard it called the inner heaven. And that is a great archetypal name. And the midheaven is also a great archetypal name. The midheaven speaks to purpose. The IC speaks to that is which is most personal about us in a chart. So the midheaven's like the king-queen archetype. I love this. And our public roles and our contributions. Whereas the Imum Quelli is more the magician. It's our inner roots and our foundations. And everybody knows what a king and a queen is. They're very public. They make rules. They make order out of what we consider to be chaos due to our understanding. And the Imunkweli, the magician archetype, and that's our inner roots and our foundations. So that is the most personal, besides the ascendant, very personal. That's a hidden part of ourselves that most people will not see. So it's basically between the two, we're balancing the inner, which is the IC, with the outer, which is the MC, through this vertical axis going from top to bottom. And so if we're looking at midheaven, let's keep it in the fixed mode for the sake of my neurospicy rainforest nervous system and brain. And so let's move it to midheaven is in Aquarius, IC is in Leo. And let's choose the sun, and let's see what else I haven't choose. Let's choose the sun, and let's choose Venus. And let me put the sun at the top of the chart and put Venus at the bottom. And so the sun is in Aquarius, which in traditional astrology, according to that lineage, it is not a comfortable pairing. Now, in psychological astrology, less so. You know, it's less of an emphasis. And in archetypal astrology, depending on which lineage we speak of, it's not considered at all. In my own lineage of which I speak of, which modern eclectic archetypal astrology, with a little evolutionary thrown in there, the sun in Aquarius is having to learn new tricks. Okay? Whenever you see a planet in a sign by a detriment and fall, you're going to see a lot of growth having to happen because there is no other choice. Where a planet in this case, sun in Aquarius is considered to be in detriment. That means it's going to have to learn some new tricks. The sun in Leo is the in crowd, that person, that queen bee or king bee, what have you, whether they be, whatever their gender, that's queen bee energy. And that is the nexus point, the person who is the center of it all, who runs things. Included, comfortable, safe. Sun in Leo is safe. It doesn't have to think too much. It's able to shine, express, be proud, desire recognition, etc. To be able to have authentic self-expression. And that is still true for Aquarius. But Aquarius now is aware of other people, and where maybe the sun in Leo might not notice as much because the sun shines brightly, and that bright shining sun may provide clarity or it may blind you. That's another thing that people tend to ignore. And when the sun is in Aquarius, which is at winter in the northern hemisphere, and summer in the southern hemisphere, but anyway, at a time when that sun might be a little tad less bright, so providing clarity. But now you look around and you see all the others who don't have as good, who collectively the world's not equal. Sun in Aquarius realizes that there are misfits and black sheep and black unicorns and etc. and people that are demonized, and there's demons and monsters, people demonized and their traits weaponized against them. There's oppression. And the sun in Aquarius in the 10th house is very much aware of that fact. Or in the MC in Aquarius is very much aware of that fact. So when we had, in the previous example, we had the moon on the ascendant and we had Mars on the descendant. And that means those two planets are shaping the expression and activating that ascendant-descendant energy. So the moon in Taurus gives us someone who likes safety and likes pleasure and comfort and delights in moving slowly and savoring all of that life has to offer and don't want to be hurried while doing it, and also wants to dot those I's, cross those T's so as to avoid any mistakes. Whereas the Mars on the descendant is that how we come across to others, but also how our awareness of them, as it were. And so that energy might come off as a little bit more assertive, more actively trying to get to know people, to get underneath, behind whatever way they want to show themselves to us. Trying to get deeper. It's wanting to merge. It's wanting intimacy. So that Mars in Scorpio is motivated by intimacy. It's the why is this person the way they are? It's the why am I the way I am? Why is this the way it is type of energy. Now, if we're looking at that sun in Aquarius, we're looking at the ascendant alongside. So that MC in Aquarius is going to be more noticing that everybody doesn't have it as wonderfully, that everybody is not equal, that the world is not this wonderful humanitarian utopia that we all hope that existed in the time without beginning past and will exist in the far out future, because that's where we tend to put our goals. Way back where we don't have any empirical data, and way out in the future we have even less and have less of an ability to control it. And so now with the MC in Aquarius, we have suddenly the ability to see all those others who aren't as lucky, who don't have the recognition, who are working and trying hard too and just not winning at the game of life. And if we're looking at that MC, that's a calling thing, and its affinity with the 10th house, we're also seeing how we're seen. And so this energy is more innovative. We might be seen as a humanitarian, the rebel, the scholar, the person who feels removed, the extraterrestrial, for example, the genius. There are a lot of Aquarian MC archetypes. And let's put the sun alongside. And that would be, a pretty tight conjunction. Keep it at 17 degrees for both, just for ease. And now you have someone whose self-expression tends to be more eccentric and wants to go their own way and may come off a little aloof and may come off a little bit cool and impartial, and also maybe the scientist, who always seems to be objectively measuring and quantifying. And sometimes this energy makes people feel as if they're underneath a magnifying glass, so that we're wearing under a microscope and we are running an experiment. And people may feel uncomfortable with that type of energy. It's a little quirky, a little eccentric, may come off as very odd or peculiar to a lot of people. Okay, so we've got the sun hanging out there. That means people are going to see us as a bit odd, a bit peculiar, curious type, maybe a little aloof like a scientist, or a little odd like extraterrestrial odd, like way out there odd. And that's how we might be perceived. And it also says that with the MC here, the consideration is that it is not equal. And now that I'm aware, what do I want to do about it? On the other hand, we've got that IC in Leo. And at the bottom of the chart is an understanding, a comfort, ideally in the self and our self-expression. If we were fortunate and we have this IC and we have Venus alongside, hopefully this means that we've had it's been a little bit easier. We've been more supported and supportive of our authentic expression. Maybe our formative years and the experiences in those years were more comforting, more safe, allowed us to authentically express ourselves in a way that makes us feel comfortable in our own skin, so that it is a stronger position when we are facing that other people aren't as fortunate. And if we put Venus, as I said, alongside, Venus is about values. What do we value? Self-expression, authentic self-expression, and to be recognized for our talents and our gifts and our contributions. And this is an oppositional push and pull at 17 degrees from that sun in the MC. And so what that says to me is that whilst we value being part of the in crowd, we value being warm and taken care of and supported and feeling safe to express ourselves and comfortable in our own skin and also a little intense, there's that part of us that suddenly we're going to be awakened to the fact that, wait a second, I have it like this, and we might go years without realizing that other people might not have it as good as we do. And that 10th house is a growth opportunity because it now makes us aware of the fact that we can be aware, and that awareness can lead to us doing something about it. So let's say that Venus is still hanging there. But let's say about 16 degrees, and I'm going to give two examples. We've got Chiron in Leo alongside. There are wounds here, for example. And so, yes, there's comfort in our own skin, but it came from getting hurt. That some people didn't care much for our authentic self-expression and had a lot of thoughts about it. And so that creates a completely different dynamic than just Venus being there, because now this person's coming from an experience of understanding what it's like to, yes, I'm comfortable in my own skin. However, it came at the cost of me being who I am 100% authentically. Fully authentically is what I want to say. Probably not 100%, but fully authentically. It came at a cost. Let's move that Chiron placement and put it at 16 degrees, but let's put it next to the Sun and the MC. Now that wound is about being othered, and it's also sometimes being a token. That's another thing that people don't understand, is also a archetype and a keyword. The token is an archetype. It is someone who is tokenized, meaning they're allowed to represent their people, like allowing a woman to join a company, a field or a company that has been traditionally male, and she's one of the few women there. That is tokenism. That is allowing her to be there to represent all the other women who are not going to be there. So that's also being allowed to be part of this. Now consider the story of Chiron as an archetypal story. What it's like to be othered. What it's like to not be accepted for who you are, for the way you look, and to be rejected. And then to have someone, two gods, Apollo and Artemis, decide to be your foster parents because your real mother didn't like you enough, thought you were too ugly to raise, and ran off and left you and abandoned you, and now you've got these godlike parents. And so it's an understanding when you put Chiron in Aquarius on the MC and the Sun. It's an understanding of what it's like to be othered, to be ignored, to be rejected, to not be allowed to be who you really are, because who you really are is too out there for people to understand, to conceive of, too eccentric, too quirky. And so now you see the energy changes here archetypally, because Chiron is also the wounded healer and the maverick. That means sometimes in order to know yourself, you have to go your own way, meaning you have to walk away from what your comfort zone is and what your people, your way back people and your family of origin have taught you, to find out what matters to you, what you value, so you can better be more of yourself and be authentic in your self-expression, which is what the Sun in Aquarius is about. I am quirky. I have parts of me that aren't always pretty to look at, but are still valid, for example. That's how I might read that. So when I'm looking MC, now how do we get King and Queen? Well, King and Queen is, like I said, the Sun could be King energy. And typically it is, which is why you don't see this much anymore, but it's lords. So in this house it is warmth, but it's a king and the queen who allows all people, including the misfits, including the black unicorns, including the black sheep, etc., to bask in the warmth, to express themselves, to be themselves, and to feel safe doing so. That's how that energy would look. And if we're looking at the Imunqueli as a mage archetype, mages are confident and resourceful. So our inner roots, foundations, what roots us? Well, the major archetype is that this energy with the I see in Leo, the energy tends toward what strengths I have, what resources. I have confidence. I am comfortable in my own skin. I like who I am, and I value what I bring to the table. Going up against understanding that people might perceive you as weird, for example. And so we're looking at that type of energy. When these planets start to activate by transit or via secondary progressions, now you start to notice that maybe you didn't notice it before. Maybe our hypothetical person did not notice that other people weren't getting it. All of a sudden, one day, a progressed moon in Aquarius just came around and just hung out with the natal sun, MC, and Chiron in Aquarius. And suddenly, they started to recall when they were a child, all the times people called them weird or quirky or eccentric or too out there, or how they were rejected for the black sheep or the black unicorn. And those experiences were not top of mind, suddenly are very top of mind and everywhere. You start to see the other, the people who aren't getting, the rejected, the abandoned, and you start to really niggle, because you're always thinking about it, and it starts to really make one question oneself. And once one is questioning oneself using archetypes, a new story can emerge, a new narrative of life. Before is the in-crowd, the cliques, and now it's like, I feel the need to expand toward the rebels, the misfits, who aren't as seen and heard, who aren't invited to the table. I want them to pull up a chair. And that is a totally different narrative than, I love being part of the in-crowd. Okay? So via transit and via secondary progression, the narrative of one's life can change. Alrighty, so I think that is a good stopping point. And so the key insights here about angles is that they're like an incarnation cross that you might find in human design. It's giving you the bigger themes, the major themes in life that are going to alter the narrative, as it were, if we choose. It is not that the planets choose for us. It's not that they make us do anything or any of that sort. It's just they illuminate areas, themes, archetypes, narratives, so that we can question those narratives and better comprehend ourselves. Because comprehending the self is the first step in changing a mindset. Because once you change your mindset, you can change your identity, how you identify. And that identity will shape and influence how you move through the world and what actions you take as you experience the world and move through it. Okay? So, practically, you want to identify one's most active angle through transits. So, that's basically what planets are there, what points are there. Make notes of that. Also, with world building, what is that MC? You can make it a place, you can make it a person, you can make it an animal, you can make it a magical creature. That is your choice, if you choose or not choose. I love stories, so that's why I choose to tell it through stories. Archetypes lend themselves brilliantly to story. Okay, so what story does your MC, your IC axis tell? What story does your ascendant and your descendant tell? Ask questions. If you like oracle cards and tarot, you can draw cards to help you formulate questions and themes to investigate. Okay? So, there is a newsletter. It's called the Daily Stargazer. If you like cosmic insights on what's going on the daily and want to keep on top of that, that's the way to go, and you're going to find that in the show notes. Episode 8 is coming. We're going to be looking at the signs as archetypal energies in astrology, and also please check out our Pinterest and YouTubes, because that's where the visual guides, once I get round to doing that, will be. And thank you very much, star people, for being here. If it's your first time, welcome, and if you've been here all along, thank you very much. And we're going to continue our journey next week. So peace and astro magic.